everyone, and welcome to Pop Screen. I nearly forgot the name of my own podcast there, just in case anyone was wondering what that was. But no, of course I remember that We The Geek Show's dedicated podcast that covers the good, the bad, and the inexplicable of movies either starring, about, or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a writer for The Geek Show and Horrified.com, the British horror website. I've been joined this week by...
Yeah, I'm Sarah Hayton. I write and direct films.
Indeed.
Well, we've chosen a bit of an auspicious day to review this, haven't we?
I'm going to say yes.
Because we are reviewing Never Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and we are recording this on the day when it was leaked from the US Supreme Court that they are planning to overturn
Roe v. Wade.
It's Roe v. Wade, isn't it? Yeah, I just heard something in the background when I was coming up here, and I was just like, oh my God, that must be Roe v. Wade, because they didn't give out the name, and that is shocking. That's shocking.
And I was originally going to do this episode and say that on the Wednesday after this drops for my birthday, I was planning to do a fundraiser for abortion charities helping women in Texas, which now looks painfully naive in thinking that this shit is going to remain in Texas. So I am instead doing a fundraiser on May the 18th for NARAL, fundraising for abortion access all across America, and you can donate for that just by looking for me on Facebook.
Excellent.
But the rather less grave disappointment I've had with this film is shoehorning it into Pop Screen because it has Sharon Van Etten in and finding that she completely disappears after 5 minutes.
Yes, a bit disappointing. But to be fair, I didn't know her before. I had to look her up this time. She plays the protagonist's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of scenes at the beginning to establish that family context. And she is partnered by, we're never sure whether it's a father or stepfather. And then there's a couple of younger children as well, so maybe it is a stepfather with that sort of age gap, but it's not explicit. So yes, but she's very sympathetic and caring in those
She's a good
scenes.
mum, isn't she? Yes.
Yeah, she is. She comes across very nicely.
Because she's introduced at a family meal following a talent contest, which it's a very realistic portrayal of a middle school talent contest in that I just wanted to eat my own leg to get away from it.
Yeah, and that was just the first 3 sections before you even got to the main protagonist bit, which was just so uncomfortable to watch, and just deathly silence from the audience. So,
I've got to admit,
apart from one notable moment.
I did not expect this film to start with the sort of 50s style dance number, and I did briefly think, have I clicked on the wrong link?
Yeah, and there's 3 sections where there's there's a barbershop quartet type thing, and they've all got the cute varsity cardigans on with their initials on, and it's all really cutesy and middle schooly. And then there's somebody miming to Elvis in the Elvis outfit. And I don't know whether he is called Mel, but anyway.
That would be a good tribute act, wouldn't it? Yeah, if Mel Smith, the late Mel Smith, had had an Elvis tribute, that could have been the name.
Yeah. Wow, late stage. And then there's another sort of a dance troupe, and they're sort of bopping, and they've got the ponytails, and again it's really cutesy. And then you go from this kind of chocolate box envisioning of the 50s straight clashes right up against the autumn character Sydney Flanagan doing her own composition, we assume, and it's just a girl and a guitar, and it's the painful way that she's being treated by her boyfriend at the time. It's really nails down a blackboard, awful. You feel it viscerally in your stomach, and to have that way of disclosing something that may or may not be happening is, I mean, there are better ways of disclosing things, but she isn't the most loquacious of people anyway. And it seems like maybe that is her only channel. And at one point, actually, you know, she meets a younger man on the bus, like a young teenager on the bus. And turns out he's in a band, and you wonder if at some point at the end of the film maybe she'll get up on stage. There might be something, you know, if it was more Hollywood, I'm wondering if that might be how things would play out, where her musical abilities are sort of shown to be
validated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And well received by a critical audience outside of her home state, that are perhaps more sort of savvy and understanding of her, because there's no understanding where she comes from.
Yeah, she's from Pennsylvania, which I think is a nice touch, because Pennsylvania, when you think of restrictions to abortion access in the United States, it's not the most liberal state, but it's not the first place you would go to.
Yeah, but it's not illegal. It's not illegal to have an abortion in Pennsylvania. But then you've also got people, I believe, all the Mennonites are in Pennsylvania, you're Amish, and
oh yeah, that's that type of fossil that curls round, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it was a great film with Kate Winslet as well. But you know, on the one hand, you do have these sort of more kind of cut off communities, and then on the other hand, abortion is legal. So there's two sort of, you have hope that they are perhaps more worldly, but then she finds out she's pregnant, and she goes to the first in a series of doctor figures or counselors about that. And that first appointment, I mean, I could have done it in my shed, basically, as well. Yes. You know, it's really disappointing.
It's not great, is it? Yeah. No, and there's, I think, an early sign of how subtle and how clever the film is going to be is that when she is in that the waiting room for that first appointment, she's seen looking at children's drawings on the wall, and you realise that because there are sort of parts of America where abortion is so unspeakable, any vaguely pregnancy or gynecology related centre will be set up for motherhood. It will be set up assuming that all of its customers will be either happy expectant mothers or hoping to be a mother. But she just looks at those paintings, and there's, you know, she chokes the emotion back. It's not a big demonstrative acting scene. It's just a little grace note that lets you know a bit about what the ethos of the world around her is and what sort of problems she's going to come up against.
Yeah, definitely. And that is typical of her emotionally. She's very, very buttoned down. She very rarely expresses herself. At one point, she protests against some stupid lad who was verbally abusive to her during her performance, and that might be the only time she does anything.
That's the guy where she chucks the drink in his face, isn't it? Yeah. And I liked that it's not quite clear who that guy is. It might be, like, presumably a friend of her boyfriend's. It might be her boyfriend himself. It's not, and I like that it doesn't go into this. Yeah,
it could be anybody, really. It could be just some daft lad in her class who, you know, knows a bit about her.
And I liked that, because I think when you're making a film about any kind of difficult social issue, the temptation is always to make it about the perfect victim. You know, there's a very bad melodramatic, there's a very bad melodramatic version of this film in some parallel universe where it's like firmly established that she was raped by an older man and she got pregnant, and that's why you should support her having this abortion. And it's like that is a situation that happens, but the problem with that kind of storytelling is that it implies that women who don't have such a dreadful backstory don't deserve it.
No, exactly that. It piles up those stakes early on. And that's probably the fun and games segment, if you're thinking of the Blake Snyder sort of structure or something like that, where you've got the setup, and then you can see the permutations of that setup, and you get montages and things in that section, and you know, all the fun stuff. But in this film, no fun stuff.
I love the idea of watching this with like the Blake Snyder checklist and thinking, not seeing the fun and games yet, but it must be in here somewhere.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
Maybe that's in the Blake Snyder cut.
Yeah. This film starts off really quite downbeat, downtrodden, but as it goes along, it gets so much worse.
Yes, that was a good. You've sold the keeper a dummy with that. It sounded like, to the untrained ear, you were about to say, "It's not as bleak as you'd think. You know, you should watch it." It's quite... No, it's much bleaker. Yeah, it's terrible what happens, and that is actually, to be serious for a second, that was part of why it took me a couple of years to watch it, because this came out in the UK in May 2020. It was in there with like Vivarium and things like that, in that first wave of indies that switched to VOD very quickly as a replacement strategy. And I thought, I mean, I'm reading the reviews, everyone says it's very good, I'm sure it is very good, but the pandemic's just started and I'm already depressed without the help, to be honest. But I'm glad I went back to watch it, because I think this is an excellent movie.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would have your tissues, or, you know, for me, it wasn't crying. It was just just anger at the horrible situation.
Yeah.
And, you know, even when she goes to New York to get a termination, she has to go through a series of counselors that are all really nice, but there's certain questions that apparently they have to ask her that are really intrusive.
Yes. Yeah.
And she can't just say, "Oh, actually, I just want an abortion." Like you say, you know, you can't just make a film about a girl who wants an abortion and gets one.
Yeah, and that's where the title comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, so that comes from the survey that she has to complete with the second counsellor that she sees. The first counsellor is the financial counsellor, interestingly.
Priorities.
Yeah, and the answers to all of the questions that she's given is never, rarely, sometimes, always, and they include some very sensitive questions like, have you ever been abused by a partner or anybody in your life? And that's, you know, that's I think the one time where we see her filling up, and yeah, and it gets to her, and it's just really awful. And the counsellor does make a follow-up appointment with her, but it just feels so out of reach, the whole film. And this is uniquely American, I think, the vastness of that country and her own relationship to the people around her, except her cousin. The length of distance between her and any facilities to help her is so huge. Yeah. I mean, and also the knowledge isn't there. Like, anybody can Google, but she doesn't realize that initial pregnancy test can just be bought at Walgreens, at any chemist.
Yeah.
And she's gone to this doctor and set up this like stressful appointment with this extremely pro-life doctor, saying babies are wonderful and all that business. When you hold it in your arms, shut up.
That video that she's shown, I had to look this up. Real guy.
It's a real guy, and it's a real
organisation. It looked like a public information film. It looked like the one that follows from Zinc and its many uses, or Reefer Madness, or whatever it might be this week.
It is the Reefer Madness of abortion education. Yes, I looked at it. It's Greg Cunningham, who was a staffer in the Reagan administration.
Oh God, that's old. Bloody hell.
I mean, it is, but when you start tracking this stuff back, you do realise that the poison came in with the Reagan years, that he was the one who thought he could play up to this shit. Yeah. But they used to be called the Centre for Bioethical Reform at a time when anti-abortion stuff, I guess, was still underground enough that you would need to give it a bland name. And then once that passed, he decided that was going a bit soft, and he changed it to the Genocide Awareness Project.
Bloody hell. Oh my god.
GAP. So listeners, if you find any information about GAP online, please ring them up and ask them questions about genes. Please do that.
Absolutely do that. How many shades have you got of beige? Fairly important.
Yes, blue denim is the devil's colour. It promotes lust.
They even wrote a song about it.
Yeah, opposed by the vicar in Footloose, and as such opposed. Yeah,
rightly so. Like, yes, down with this sort of thing. Careful now.
It's absolutely hilarious how Graham Linehan has unironically become that lonely guy with a placard standing outside a movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah, let's not get into that.
No, we've got enough on our hands with abortion.
Scary territory. yeah, absolutely. I thought what came across really well, I think, and I forgot to look this up, and I meant to look it up, I'll look it up now, who's the colorist in this, because that palette. Yes,
and it normally bothers me a bit when you have
something deliberately gritty.
Yeah, when it's kind of grey to the extent where it stops looking like something I might see in reality, but I didn't get that with this. I thought it was just on the edge of what I would accept. It's heavy enough to be evocative, to be emotional, but it doesn't, it's not like when you turn on the TV now and there's another cop show that wants you to think it's a bit like a Scandinavian one, and it takes place in a parallel universe where every single thing is navy blue. Literally everything.
Indeed. I think they stay away from that quite well. It's got it's just the amount of browns and murky beiges and I don't know, it's some sort of 80s hangover, free crockery from a garage type.
Yes, yeah, it's that kind of plasticky beige that I always associate with, like, all of the shopping centres were like this when I was a kid, before Apple came in and put some extra lights in.
Indeed. And you think, when she gets to America and, when she gets to New York, and you would think that things sort of move on a little bit there, and they don't really, apart from when she's in the middle of Times Square. With all the bright lights and advertising hoardings and so on, which to her seems overwhelming. That's it. It's just that sort of muted palette, and I think the whole film has this lovely tone about it. It's not going to be in your face. It's not going to be exaggerated for to tug on those heartstrings. It's just presented quite starkly as is. And provokes exactly the correct, exactly the intended response.
Yeah, and there's a couple of ingredients that I think are particularly impressive in setting that tone, one of which we've touched on, one of which we haven't. The one we haven't is this movie's other music connection, which is the score by Julia Holter.
Oh, now then, who's she?
Julia Holter had I mean, she's been sort of quietly successful for a while, but she had a bit of a moment in 2015, I think it was, when she released the album Have You in My Wilderness. Nope.
No, nothing.
Very good album, though. I find some of her work I find a bit difficult. She released an album after Have You in My Wilderness, which seemed like one of those classic albums that you release when you want to get rid of a portion of your listenership. You know, it was about 70 minutes long, and it didn't half feel like it was as well. But Have You in My Wilderness is a great album, and the two singles from that, Sea Calls Me Home and Everyday Boots, absolutely fantastic, I think. But her score here is quite minimal, but also quite rich. It's very drone based, but it's not like the little reedy drones that a lot of indie films have. It's a big enveloping soundscape, I think.
So yeah, sorry, you were going to say the other one.
Well, the other one
Dialogue,
is
by any chance?
the dialogue is good, but the main thing that gets that emotional quality across is, of course, Sydney Flanagan, who is absolutely extraordinary.
She is. She's a real find.
And she is too, because she'd never acted before she did this.
Oh wow! And
I
it's
know.
so understated.
Yeah, there's nothing that there's none of the kind of show-offiness that you get when someone acts for the first time and they're not a natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
And they
have
learn those tricks.
An incredible story. I think I don't know what the greatest story about discovering an actor would be. It's not something I've really thought about much before, but this has to be one of them. She met the film's writer and director Eliza Hittman when her boyfriend was staying in a house that was run by juggalos.
What now?
Are you not familiar with the juggalos?
Do you know I'm not? I'm nearly familiar with them.
They are devoted followers of the rap rock band Insane Clown Posse.
who have
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I've heard of them.
They have a sort of complex series of rituals involving face paint and Faygo soda. They're a real American subculture. And Hitman was producing a documentary short about juggalos, and that's where she met Flanagan, in a juggalo house.
Wow, that's crazy. And what was she? Is she a follower? Is she a juggler?
I haven't. I don't think I've seen an interview with her. I think Hitman seemed to do the majority of the press about this. I would love for an interview to ask her if she's a juggalo. You could get her on Nathan Rabin's podcast, and I don't think he would neglect to ask, "Are you a juggalo?" But yeah, I don't know. I think it would be great if that was true. I think misunderstood American subcultures need recognition on films, and maybe one day we'll be talking about the first Oscar winner to be a juggalo. You know, it could happen.
I don't think I've heard of them, and I've seen the sort of makeup and so on, but I don't think I can't remember any of their songs to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't think you're missing much, but I think there is something kind of interesting in the way that Insane Clown Posse were a joke for ages, but then the fact that they'd formed this subculture made some people start to sort of grudgingly say, "Ah, well, you've got to respect that." And then, in an absolutely bizarre twist, the FBI decided that juggalos were a domestic terror threat, which was
Wow.
so weird and so unjustifiable. It actually got quite a lot of people who normally wouldn't be seen dead saying anything nice about Insane Clown Posse going to bat for them, because that was just bizarre. It was so weird. It was like the old moral panics about mods and rockers, but yeah, happening right now in the 21st century.
Yawn.
But yeah, the cast is uniformly great, and I think apart from Sharon Van Etten, there was no one at all in it that I was familiar with before.
No, including her. I don't think I've seen anybody else before either, and I think that can help.
Yeah.
Because they've not got any baggage. You've not got any previous. There's nothing, no form. Just go, oh well, he normally plays that kind of, or she normally plays that kind of character.
Yeah, I think it's a story about a very small scale life, that can easily be crushed in the machinery of bureaucracy. And I think as much as I do like Chloe Grace Moretz, it would be really distracting to see someone of that stature in this role. It just wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't. Just the ordinariness of everybody in the film. There's no sort of movie star looks, and they're just ordinary people.
Yeah, I want to talk about a few more of them because we've only briefly mentioned her cousin, who's a major figure in this film. She's very important.
Yeah. And at some point she says that she's 20, which I don't believe. I feel like she is younger than her cousin. But she's such a sweet character. She's really supportive, and she's the only person that gets on with her cousin and won't leave her, she'll just sort of stand by her to the end of the journey or whatever. And she herself has to undergo difficulty and break the law to go on this journey, which she does for her cousin's sake. And it's a lovely character.
And it's not it's a very close relationship. It's not uncomplicatedly close. Like at the start of the film, Autumn, Sydney Flanagan's character, already knows she's pregnant, but when her cousin notices something, she just sort of brushes it off and says, "I've got cramps." So this journey is one that they're taking together, but it's also one that they're kind of forced to take together. There's no one else out there for Autumn.
Yeah, it's like an enforced, quite speedy growing up process for both of them. And it's sad that it has to play out in that way.
It's very much like a classic road trip buddy movie, like Midnight Run or something, except
not like that, really.
Not really.
Yeah, fewer laughs.
Yeah. And I've not seen that actor before either. Talia Ryder.
Yeah, mostly stage credits. In regards to your question about her age, I noticed that she is not 20 even now. So yeah, you were bang on then.
Apparently she's done Matilda the musical before on Broadway, and she looks appropriate for that even now.
Yeah.
She could definitely still pass as one of the bullied kids.
It's weird, isn't it? Because like stage actors, there was a time when if a stage actor appeared in a film and they hadn't typically done films before, you would notice them because they were the ones who you were thinking, oh God, I wish they'd dial it down. But that's not the case anymore. Right? When we saw Widows and we found out that Cynthia Erivo was like this Broadway star.
Yeah, well, there's two different styles of acting. In the theatre, you've got to make it a lot bigger because you've got to hit the far seats. But in film, especially close-ups, they pick up every move on your face. So you've really got to dial it back. And it's a really hard thing to do if you're naturally sort of la expressive. And you have to just go, yes, I'm very moved by that.
I think that's the genius of Talia Ryder's performance. There are no jazz hands at all in it. It can't have been easy for her, but she has suppressed the stage kid's natural tendency.
I think both the leads have very expressive eyes, different kinds of eyes, but they express what's happening definitely. I mean, what's she called? Sydney Flanagan as Autumn just has something in her eyes which...
And you need that because it's a very close-up-y film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't seen any of Hitman's other work. I remember hearing a lot of good things about Beach Rats, and I'm definitely minded to check that out now.
I think it's worthwhile checking out her films. This is the first Hitman film I've seen, but it's encouraged me to go and see others, definitely, or find others online. It's such a sparsely dialogued film as well. Once the journey starts, especially, it's other people that seem to be doing the talking. And of the one person who really needs to talk, really needs to tell us all what's going on, and she's monosyllabic most of the time, if that. I mean, there's a whole bus journey to New York from Pennsylvania, which is not inconsiderable.
Yeah.
And it's her cousin that ends up talking to a guy on the bus. Well, let me put that correctly. It's the guy who pesters Talia. What's her
Skylar.
character name?
Skylar.
So he sort of pesters Skylar by touching her on her arm, which gets its own close up, which to me says this is somebody intruding. This is somebody touching somebody without permission, even though it's just a touch in the arm. But that's like a broader.
It's the micro version, isn't it? It's like the final version is what we've seen Awesome go through back at home with the kids in the talent show audience. But there's also, you're right, that close up gives a sense that this is the micro version. This is the first domino.
Yeah, and he's not the guy who is her boss at the supermarket, for instance, or at least the person who they hand the money over to. They go into the back office, they're cashing up, and then they hand the money through a slot to somebody in a back room who, takes care of the money. But that's not what happens, because this is a film that's, so many different types of abuse from men onto women. And you know how old these girls are, and he's just like perving over their hands when they get in there, and it's just it just made me want to retch. Horrible.
Yeah, that guy on the bus, though, he is such a fascinating character to me, because I think it's the first time you've seen that kind of relationship, which is just, and this is a bleak phrase to use, but I don't know how I can say it any better, but ordinary coercive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a different layer of, it's calculated coercion, isn't it?
It's not like the misogynistic villain who you normally see in movies like this. It's just a guy,
just sly.
Who has just been raised in an environment where it's okay if a woman says no, to just sort of push and push and push. And he's not at root a bad guy, but he does bad things,
I've no idea if he's a good guy or not, but that to me just makes him all over bad, sneaky. If he's like that in this situation, then I would extrapolate that to other areas of his life as well. So
yeah, it's probably true. I guess I suppose what I'm kind of comparing it to is something like Promising Young Woman, where I watched that film, and firstly that was a mistake because it's fucking terrible, but I didn't feel like it was challenging me as a male viewer, and I think it should. I think something like this you should feel challenged when you see the world from the opposite perspective to the one you have. But it's like every single male character in that film, bar one, is just a cartoon sleazeball who is just full of really caricatured tics and has no three-dimensional quality whatsoever. And I just thought, oh yeah, I'm just laughing at these guys because, they're just comic stereotypes rather than anything deeper.
I found it tricky, that film, because it got such a lot of hype. And I was excited for it, and I love Whatchacalla in the main role.
Oh, Mulligan's great. Yeah, I exempt her from any criticism.
No memory now.
Yeah.
It really, it was such a disappointment. But yeah, anyway.
It is, and that film is weirdly invested in criticizing women for misogyny. I think it's like all of the men, all of the women get really elaborate revenge enacted on them, and all of the men have Carrie Mulligan in a sort of Halloween costume saying, "Now you don't do any more rapings, you hear me, right?" And it's like,
yes, let's not do that.
Not what I signed up for, if I'm honest.
It's a totally different sort of tone, and it's. I guess that there was my guess is that Emerald Fennell had to jump through lots of Hollywood type hoops. I don't know. She doesn't seem to have the empathy, and she's just got it on the back of
Killing Eve.
Killing Eve.
Yeah. I was going to have another guess, but my guess is that Emerald Fennell is not a very good writer, would be the polite way of saying what my guess is. But Yeah. And yet that was the one that got the Oscar, and I think it's very telling that when you're asking for a fundamentally conservative institution like the Academy to like look around them and look at the sort of the rising tide of women's voices and women's activism that is in part happening because of the abuses they covered up. You know, the Harvey Weinstein case was a huge part of why this ball started rolling down the hill. And
and he'll be one of countless dozens, if not hundreds of others.
Yeah,
that whole
absolutely.
atmosphere.
So when that institution is trying to like look like it gets it, you know what I mean? They will reward something like Promising Young Woman, which is an unchallenging cartoon version. Or what's it?
Or Moonlight.
Well,
That's
Moonlight's good, so I don't want to.
No, Moonlight is good, but didn't that get an Oscar as well?
Oh, it did, yeah, but
as in, like, oh, we have to give the Oscar to a film like this rather than to the latest Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, I guess, but
like, you know, when Coca-Cola says, oh, well, we're now making our drink in recycled bottles, and it's just like, well, so is everybody else, you know. And it's like loads of greenwashing. That's not the biggest step you could take, Coca-Cola.
Completely. The biggest step you could take would be to not fund the murder of Latin American labor activists, but that's another story.
Preferably yes, if you wouldn't mind. You could see your way.
My point with the Oscars was more like, if there was a better film than Moonlight in terms of black representation that year, I would be annoyed that Moonlight won, but there wasn't. There absolutely wasn't. Whereas with Promising Young Woman, there absolutely was a better film about feminism released that year. It was this, and you still gave it to Promising Young Woman because that's the sort of pre-chewed version.
Yeah, I mean, did you see the guy, one of the people speaking about the Oscars, one of the guys who is on the judging panel for that, and they have to watch, 300 to 400 films, and obviously they can't watch all of them. And he said that he didn't want to watch this film because something like he didn't support murder of babies or fetuses, something like that. And that was, that's somebody who is still on that committee.
That is someone who is still on that committee because, and I swear to God this is true, they won a Best Documentary Feature Oscar in 1973 for a film about rodeos. And if you were looking for an example of why the Oscars are ridiculously fucking out of touch, this is a good place to start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only has that been superseded in terms of documentaries, but come on, rodeos. I mean, does that speak to us now?
I think when we were doing Literary Loitering, there was a book of
that was a great show.
It was. We should still do that at some point.
It was fun. It was fun.
I remember finding a book of photography about America's first gay rodeo, which make a movie about that. That's all right.
Absolutely, yeah, do that. Rodeos with a slant, some sort of an angle that applies to modern times, but you can't just do something about, rodeos, they're great. I mean, did he do anything since then? Has he updated his skills? Has he released any other fine...
technologically can't fault him. He's done a lot of IMAX stuff, in recent years.
Has he?
But I mean,
he's just, that's it, he's just changed the size of the film that he uses in the camera.
It's not really improved in quality, but the quantity of the film is way better. Yeah.
And he's American, you say. Interesting.
Yeah, I loved the sort of smug sanctimoniousness of his letter saying he would not watch a film about a murderer. He thinks abortion is genocide and all that shit. And it's just like, we have spent how long? 6-7 years since Trump and Brexit hearing these pissy little lectures about how we need to listen to and understand the opposing side. And the only change that's happened over that time is that right-wingers have gone from everyone who doesn't like me is a commie to everyone who doesn't like me is part of Tom Hanks's secret satanic paedophile ring. So I feel like maybe these sermons could have been better directed elsewhere, if I'm honest. Talk to them about understanding shit. They can't even watch a 140-minute fucking movie about people who don't agree with them. So yeah, this has got ranty, hasn't it? I knew it would go ranty.
It does. It's the kind of film that does provoke a reaction, and fair play to her for doing that, Liza Hittman for doing that. And she's obviously, I mean, I'd love to talk to her about the writing process. I mean, is this where did she, who did she talk to was it just from her own mind? Because it seems like she's based it on a number of experiences rather than just thought to herself, what would I do if my best friend killed herself in college and I wanted to get revenge on people, just like they do in Hollywood. It sounds like it's a lot. I mean, she's just reined it in. She's made it a lot more subtle, and therein lies its strength and its power. I absolutely can understand why the Oscar committee, as is, didn't award the Oscar, but a whole host of other award ceremonies have given them big awards. What have we got here? Sundance. We've got Berlin International, Hollywood Critics Association. So I mean, she did at least get nominated there. Boston,
a smaller ceremony,
New
but
York.
Delighted that at the New York Film Critics Circle, Sydney Flanagan did get Best Actress and a few other Film Critics Circle awards as well, quite rightly too.
Is there a Pennsylvania Film Critics Circle Award? No.
Yeah, I mean, even without the politics around it, which I do think have been decisive and that we know have affected how some Oscar voters voted, but it's just the Oscars always have trouble with things that are subtle. They seem to think that if the filmmaking goes like past a certain level of subtlety, it's like the film isn't being written or directed or acted at all.
Yeah, I think so. I did have a chat with my partner about, when I was watching this, about the reasons why you would make this into a dramatic film rather than, say, a documentary, and taking it down to the individual level, making it more powerful and more subtle than a documentary, which, to be fair, has probably been made a number of times, whereas this it just shows you that in 2020, when it was made, the year it was made, it's still just incredibly hard for young people. And I wondered who the audience was, the intended audience was as well, because you could see how it could be made and played in that doctor's office as a warning against getting pregnant, but also as a woman, that's a good audience demographic. As women, how women are mistreated hugely still, and nothing's done about it. How she just couldn't bring herself to tell anybody and get any support. Why didn't she tell her mom? Her mom seems very nice.
I know, but that felt like a believably teenage decision. It's like, you're 17 and she is 17. I don't know. I have no idea what the age of consent is in Pennsylvania. I know in a lot of states it's 18, so it's quite possible that she is underage. And at this age, this is the biggest thing that's going to happen to you. And so you just can't treat it like anything else in your life, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that's the exact reason.
And I think it's very good at observing those moments where the characters do the quote unquote wrong thing and contextualizing that and making that something where you absolutely do think, oh yeah, if I was in her shoes, I'd do the same thing. Of course I would.
Yeah. It was nice to see an all-woman surgical team.
There's that, yes, yeah. Pretty heavily all-woman team behind the camera too. I mean,
I noticed that. That was good.
cinematographer, let me just look up this. Helene Louvar, who is a French cinematographer who's worked with Claire Denis. I think that Claire Denis.
Oh, really?
Claire Denis seems to be like a cinematographer's academy, really. Anyone who has shot a film by Claire Denis is a great cinematographer. Oh man, she did Happy as Lazaro. She's done all of Alice Rohrwacker's films. Alice Rohrwacker is incredible. She is one of my favorite new directors in the world. I just want to live inside every single film that she makes. Yeah, this is a really great.
She's worked with Agnes Varda as well.
Oh yeah. And Wim Wenders. She did Rocks by Sarah Gavran. That's a really great film.
Wow.
This is a good CV.
Isn't it? And it's jam-packed as well.
Yeah.
Like all the things she's done since 1990. Wow. That's just 30 years and it's jam-packed with quality stuff.
There's some, again, I think this is a bit of a watch list filler. I'm probably going to watch her 1999 film Nadia and the Hippos, just because it's called Nadia and the Hippos, to be honest.
Fair enough. So on that list, have you... God, where do you even start? Is there any recommendations that you would have?
Oh God, absolutely watch the 3 Alice Rohrwacker films. I mean, Corporal Celeste, maybe that's one you could go back to if you like the other 2, but The Wonders and Happy as Lazaro are essential. They're just brilliant.
Okay. I've heard of Happy as Lazaro. I must have seen the trailer for it at some point. I've not seen the film, I don't think.
I saw it at the Tyneside Cinema, and I had very little idea of what it was about. I can't remember what else I'd seen. I'd gone to see something else, and I wanted to make it a double bill, so I went to see that. And I just remember sitting there and just having that wonderful feeling of thinking, what's this? I don't get this. Oh, wait, is this? Oh my God, it's this. And just seeing a film like really slowly unfold into somewhere you could never have predicted it would go. It was great.
What have I seen by Claire Denis that we've chatted about?
High Life.
Oh, right.
Which was the Claire Denis film?
Robert Pattinson.
That's it, yeah.
That's it. I remember now. God, that was lost in the mist of time. Yeah, it was a good-looking film, that.
Claire Denis films always look great. I can't find the Denis film that she's done, though. I wonder if it was... Maybe it was like not as a cinematographer. Maybe it was as a assistant director or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. She did Lost Daughter as well.
Lost Daughter, the film I know as. I'm definitely going to watch it one day. It's just finding the time.
Cool. Anyway, we've got distracted again.
We've got distracted
it's
by
easy done, isn't it?
something
like,
pretty great, I would say. Yes.
I like going down a Wikipedia hole sometimes.
Completely, me too. Yeah.
Oh, the chicken scene.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the chicken. Yeah. Can it be real?
I don't doubt it. This is New York. Of course it can be real.
It's the city of dreams, chickens.
That's an Onion headline, isn't it?
That was so
America's
bleak, that challenged the
source.
chicken game.
Yes. Yeah. Horrible.
It felt to me very much like a reference to... Have you ever seen Strosek by Werner Herzog?
No, I've not seen much Werner Herzog, and I can't remember the ones that I've seen. So let me just check. But anyway, carry on. Is it Wojciech?
No.
Wojciech. No?
No, it's not Wojciech. No. Strosek is the one about the German street musician who goes to New York no, he doesn't go to New York, actually. He goes through New York, but he ends up in the Midwest somewhere to find his fortune, and it goes really horribly wrong. But there's a dancing chicken in that, which it is also like just a really depressing sight, and deliberately so. And the challenge, the chicken game, made me think this is definitely a Strosek reference.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? It's like somebody trying to find it's, massively symbolic, but the whole idea of, the business, who put the business case forward for that? What were they thinking? For sticking a chicken in a box and making it play tic-tac-toe or noughts and crosses.
I do find like it's the sort of thing you would get at a really sort of grubby, rundown seaside resort, and I find all of the arcade games there really depressing as well. Like just looking at them and thinking this was expected to be fun. Yeah,
not for the chicken.
Sure. Not for anyone, I suspect, but definitely not for the chicken.
God, have I really only seen Wings of Desire from Wim Wenders' back catalogue?
But that's not Werner Herzog, that's Wim Wenders.
Oh, I'm looking at Wim Wenders, sorry. Oh, darn.
No wonder you're not seeing Strosek.
Sorry, I got my Werners and my Wims mixed up.
For people listening to this on audio, Sarah has a pen in her mouth, but she is sounding like a drunk old football pundit all of a sudden.
Thank you, that's totally intended.
That's what I'm going for. That's my style.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at Wim Wenders, I was thinking that doesn't look like the guy that we all do the impression of.
No, he doesn't look like he'd have that voice.
No, I don't think I've. Oh my God, I don't think I've seen any of his films. No.
Have all of my impersonations of Werner Herzog been for nothing?
I must have seen one of his films. Filmography, there we go. No. Oh, main article. That's why I'm only seeing opera. No, I'm not seeing Aguirre. Oh, I've seen Nosferatu the Vampire. And I have seen, it is Wojciech that I've seen.
Yes, with Klaus Kinski.
Yeah. No, I think that's it, those two, really.
Well, you know how I feel about Herzog. Always worth a dive.
Anyway, already we've got distracted again. Sorry, folks. Right, and back to it.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of finish off with a few more music connections. I say Sharon Van Essen disappears after 5 minutes, but that's not strictly true. She does the closing song, Staring at a Mountain, which is very nice and very, very characteristically Sharon Van Essen, I think.
Yeah, I figured she'd probably submit a tune for the film as well. So does she still record and everything now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she's got a new album out this year, which has the fantastic title, We've Been Going About This All Wrong. Yeah, she's still recording. I think if anything, she's going to step back from acting because she's done some other acting roles, most notably in the TV series The OA. But I read an interview with her recently about her new album, and she said, I just feel like a total fraud when I'm acting. I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Yeah. How old is she?
I do not know. Let me check. She is 41.
Yeah. Okay. So I used to do some acting myself, and when I got into my 40s, I just got this feeling that I just didn't want to be kind of on display so much anymore.
Yeah.
That make, I don't know, I just like getting a bit shyer or something. And I think you do feel like the last thing that I was in was in 2008, I think, the last full thing that I was in. And I just felt very like I was putting on an act, even though I totally was, and that was absolutely what I was there to do. I just felt like a weird phony for doing it. So I just like, actually, this is a weird feeling now. I don't want to do it anymore.
I wonder if it's because, once you hit that age, you should hopefully feel pretty secure in yourself, and that like need for validation is. I'm not saying that every single actor does it out of neediness, although that is true. We've all met actors. We know that's what they're like. But I suppose once you get to that age, you feel like you don't need to do anything that isn't coming straight out of you, that isn't essential to who you are, what you need, what you do.
Yeah. I think I was playing a character that I didn't really like her very much, and she's all right. She's a bit, I don't know, wasn't too keen on her. So after that I just didn't feel like going back to it very much. I'll wanted to focus more on writing, I think.
I think that's the other thing too, isn't it? Which I suppose might be part of what Sharon Van Etten's thinking about, is that when you are writing, whether it's a script or a song, you are doing something that is absolutely personal in a way that acting can be. You can approach it with that attitude, but for a lot of people, that isn't how they see it.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time not being yourself. And I think one of the reasons I gave up acting was because I felt like a jumble of people, and I needed to just sort of cleanse from that, really. So that impacted my decision as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But Sarah, even though you don't act anymore, you of course podcast and you do lots of other things. So just remind us, where can people find your work?
You can go on, you can see 50 Shades on Vimeo and I think on YouTube now. And I've got sort of bits and bobs on Grin Up North for the BBC, and I'm on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram. Is that everything? I think so.
I think that's covered all of the internet. Yeah, because there's like only about 5 companies that own everything now, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yes, and as said, you can find me on Horrified and at The Geek Show. But until next week, when we'll be back with more Pop Screen, I've been Graham.
And I've been Sarah. It's been lovely spending time with you again.
And we'll see you next week.